The session is supposed to start at 2.
Yeah, in 8 minutes.
I don't know. You want me to talk about something in 10 minutes? I don't have anything for this 10 minutes.
I think we can start. Yeah, I think we can start.
Yeah.
Everybody is here.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for coming to the session. Today I'm going to talk about the Drupal Admin UI modernization, the initiative that we're doing. I'm Cristina Chumillas. I'm a designer and front-end developer. I work at Imbro, a Drupal agency in Barcelona. And you can find me on Twitter as Chumillas or on Drupal.org as Secrina. So here's an overview of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to present the initiative and what's going on there. I'm going to talk a little bit about the design system that we're working on. And then I'm going to go through several things like the user studies we conducted. I'm going to show the wireframes, the UI design and what we're doing for the 7th refresh. For those of you that actually are here expecting some demo about for the React app, it's not going to happen. I mean, I'm not going to show a line of code here. I'm mainly going to talk about the work being done on the design and on UX and all this part of the initiative. I'm not going to talk about the React app. So if any of you were expecting that, there will be no problem if you want to go to your session. That is really good. So I won't be angry on that. So to talk a little bit about the initiative and to let you know what's that. Right now, the top priorities for us are on one side the design system. It's mainly its primary goal is to find a system that is going to work for the whole admin UI. It means not only core, it means also all the config modules, all the forms, all the interactions that are going to happen through the administration interface on Drupal. Then there's the React app that is being built, and then there's a JavaScript modernization that is also working on creating or encasing Drupal APIs. And that's a technical part that I'm not going to talk about today. Today I'm going to focus all the time on this first part for the design system. Yeah, you're not late. They just made me start. So from this part about the design system, we are mainly focused on three parts. The first one is the UX research, the user studies that we've been conducting. Then there's this new design for the UI, and then there's the 7th refresh. And I'm going to say 7th refresh, new 7, and that's all that I'm going to say about the name of it, because I don't want to spend more time debating about the name that new thing needs to have, because it's been enough polls, enough debates about the new name. Some people say 8, but if it's going to be used on Drupal 9, what about 8? Claro and other things, so too many bike shedding there. So a little bit of a timeline about this. The JS modernization initiative started on their side a while ago. There was this first Drupal.org issue where openly people say to refresh the UI for the first time. And then at DrupalCon Vienna, there was this meeting where React was the chosen one for the new app, the new admin UI. And there were also, I think, 2 or 3 bots regarding the admin UI. And also there were a whole day of sprints on the Friday sprints at the DrupalCon to move forward with this. After that, there were several meetings with people involved on the sprints and the bugs. There were also several meetings on the UX meetings that every morning are held. And some of the things that happened there is that we defined more or less the first version of the style guide. And we decided that we were going to target the content authors. It means that we're not targeting the site builders, for example. It means that we're targeting content authors. It means that we are targeting people that are going to live in a best or worst meaning of the word for 8 hours with our websites, with the website that we've built, probably 1 year, probably 2 months that we have spent on that, but they are going to spend years working on that. So that's why we need to improve the administration for them. So after that, there was Drupal Camp Rook, where we met with Ancha, Clara, his nickname, and they were working with Rachel Norfolk on changing the information architecture for the administration. And we met there, and even they were working on the current information architecture that we have right now for administrators and site builders. We all agreed that we need to change that also, not only the interface itself, but also the information architecture that we have in Drupal. Then we decided that after that, in March, we decided that we were going to start a refresh for 7, because if we wanted to have something on Drupal 8, if we wanted to have something sooner, we needed to refresh Drupal 7, because if we were going to wait until the new React was finished, probably it will take probably at least 1 or 2 years from now, and we needed to have something sooner to have a nicer Drupal administration. Then there was DrupalCon Nashville, where all the group that have been conducting all the user tests met and started a plan there. And then at Frontend United Utrecht, we were happily engaged. We just joined with the GS initiative, and we all together created the new Admin UI and JavaScript modernization initiative. I would love to have a shorter phrase here, but it's this whole thing. And we created this initiative that now is official. And after that, there are several things happened, like there was this first user test at Twin Cities at DrupalCamp. There were some sprints at Drupal Dev Days, which were great, and a lot of things were done. And then we launched the survey on August and the card sorting on September, both user tests. And at Drupal Europe, we presented the wireframes for the first time to the community. And we actually had a lot of conversations with several people, both from the layouts and paragraph people, and several conversations were held there. And also we set as a target the new 7 refresh. We needed to have it for Drupal 8.7 to have something sooner, maybe not a full release, but at least an alpha or a beta. So that's the goal. So we have a deadline now. And in November, the development for the new 7 started, at least with some of the components that we made. And some weeks ago, there was a huge change of direction for the wireframes. I'm going to talk about that later. We started the comparative study, and hopefully next week we are going to publish the issue on Drupal.org to get feedback from everybody for the 7 refresh design. So I hope you all put your thoughts there. Design related, please, not naming related. So about the design system, that's a concept sketch that Roy Stolken create some months. Mainly the concept here is that we need to set some principles, some style for the design system, and then create components, patterns, define how animation has to work, and also documentation and so on. And with all these new things, with all these rules that we are going to set, we are going to create a new visual language. Probably the deliverable will be a style guide or something like that. And the implementation will be done both on the, you see another name, 8 there, the new 7 theme, the refresh for 7, and also on the React app. It means that, for example, buttons, the component button, it will be the same both for 7 and both for the admin UI. So if we start having some pages on React and the other pages are fallback on the old 7, they will look the same. Probably not exactly the same, because probably things are just placed in different places, but at least they will have the same visual style. So that's the goal behind it. So after that, I'm going to talk about the user studies that we conducted and some of the things that we learned from here, because we actually learned a lot from here. The plan, the initial plan was great. We were going to reach a lot of participants, and we are actually going to give a DrupalCon Seattle ticket to the ones that participated, to one of the ones that participated, not all of them, thanks to the Drupal Association, because we talked with them, we said, can you help us? And they said, sure, here you have a DrupalCon ticket. And actually, Suzanne from Evolving Web, she said that she was going also to give a free training session. So participants were going to be able to win one of these things, and if they participated in any of these user tests, they could win that. So we started with the survey. What we learned from here are several things. So for example, one of the questions that we asked them is what they like about Drupal, and for example, they say that it's flexible, it's customizable, and that they like that because they feel that they have control over the content. What they don't like, the list is long. I just placed here the most important things and the ones that more people actually mentioned on their answers. So the flexibility and the customization comes at a cost, and this cost is complexity. So they expect some complexity, but maybe not so much, especially when you have a super long page with paragraphs, for example. Also something that they mentioned, and actually I never thought on that, they don't find documentation. And they don't mean documentation for site builders or for developing Drupal. They mean documentation for site builders, for content authors. How do I create a page? How do I upload an image? How do I edit an image? These kind of things. Also working with media, media in general. I mean images, or I mean files, or I mean Twitter fields, well, Twitter links, or these kind of things. We are lucky that the media team is moving forward even from this, but there's a lot of work to be done here. And also something that a lot of people mention is that they find it hard to find the content that they were looking for, and that's a thing to take into account. It seems not related, but it's kind of a way that they don't feel comfortable with the admin UI, the admin interface, and they don't really know where to go to do whatever they want to do. In general, what were their suggestions? These suggestions doesn't mean that we really need to do exactly that, but those are clues to what people is thinking and what we really need to do. For example, if they were saying, I don't like blue, don't like in blue, it's not a reason, but it can say to us something. So in this case, they mentioned to have a more modern UI, and they say that Gutenberg and Squarespace were really cool to edit content. They also mentioned that they would really like to simplify the complexity of the editing experience. They wanted a better management. They wanted improvements on the what you see is what you get editor. Again, these are thoughts that they say. It doesn't mean that we need to go on to CKI editor or make CKI editor better. That's what they thought. And also they need a more role-based configuration for content editors. Probably what we have to learn from here is that we need an interface thought for content editors, not that necessarily has to be a role-based configuration, but those are clues. And then we have the card sorting. The goal for that was to improve the information architecture. More than 150 people actually completed the poll. More than 300 people started it, and that sounds great. If we see this matrix, that's a similarity matrix. What it does is it places. Do you know what's a card sorting test? Who knows it? Just up your hand. Okay, some of you. So a card sorting is a test where participants get, if it's online, are small cards. If it's on a wall, you have different stickers with different tasks on every sticker, and then you have to group the stickers with things that you think that goes together. For example, on the top we have file uploads and image uploads. So 98% of the people place them together. I don't know the other 2% what they were thinking, but so what you can see here is that most of the people placed things related with content together, appearance-related things together, configuration. Do you see that familiar? Here we have a dendrogram. It's another way of seeing the results that we got from the test. And as you can see, what we are actually getting is exactly the same structure that we have right now, or mostly the same. So results are really close to what we have. And the problem here is that even people describe themselves as content authors. Most of them were site builders, because we know that because before starting it was an online survey, it was an online test, and before getting into the card sorting test, they had several questions, and for the answers they did, most of them were site builders. So we were targeting Drupal community, and we got the Drupal community answering the questions. So that's a problem, because we want to actually have real users answering that, not the site builders that we have on most of the cans and so on. So we will really need to think about that again, and really conduct that probably on a smaller team, probably on other places than Drupal camps, and find results and better solutions there. And then there was the comparative study. From here, we just started it. We started with these 4 solutions: WordPress with Gutenberg, Graph CMS, Contentful, and Squarespace. And that's just the first test. We were trying the script, the step-by-step that we prepared to be sure that we were doing it fine. And it's just the first result. This is a spoiler. Suzanne is going to publish a blog post on Monday, so be sure to read it, because there's going to be a lot of information there with screenshots and so on. But here are some spoilers. For example, for Contentful, what they said, what people that were actually doing the survey, They say that Contentful was intimidating, and they felt that it wasn't for editors. It was more for developers or these kind of things. And they didn't understood the terminology. They felt that it was too complex. Just with Drupal, it happens the same thing. Craft CMS, for example, they really liked it because they thought that it was prepared for editors, mainly because they have a dashboard, especially for creating content and these kind of things. And they have several. They ended up with the confusion that they didn't know what was the difference between the content that they were placing in the body field and the content that they were placing on something like paragraphs. So when you are adding an image inside the body field and you are adding an image outside in a paragraph, what's the real difference in terms of content? So that's a question that we really need to think about that also. About the Squarespace, most of them say that the interface was too simple. It seemed, on one side, it seemed too simple to handle complex websites, and on the other side, it was actually too simple to find some kind of thing. Because, for example, there was a situation where they have a rounded button to add more things in the editing field, but it was in light gray. And because of that, they didn't even see that. So these kind of things, simplifying too much, the UI can make things even harder. And finally, with WordPress, with Gutenberg, they felt like the interface was for them because it had a lot of options, but the most important ones for them were the primary ones. But they were confused because they thought that what they were editing with Gutenberg was going to be the final thing that they were going to see when they saved and go to view, but it's not like that. That's the interface, that's the administration interface that they are editing. When you click save, then you go to your front-end theme. So that's really cool to have this way of editing content, but you may end up having a crappy result because it doesn't look like the thing that you are editing. So in general, the takeaways are that more complex UI is expected for complex sites. Having a dashboard or something like that and taking into account terminology can actually make feel more comfortable the editors. And there's something that we could call publishing anxiety because they are afraid of clicking the save button. They don't know exactly what is going to happen after clicking the save button. Are they going to actually stop the editing page and go to somewhere else? Are they going to publish or unpublish? Or if they unpublish, what is going to happen? So some things that we can take from here is that autosave and a clear workflow can actually make them feel safer. And something that clearly all of them said is that they really like to have all the time the preview or save or publish buttons on site, so having them around the display. So wireframes. Those are what I'm going to show you are the wireframes that we showed an iteration after the ones that we show at Drupal Europe. So there we show them for the first time at the core conversation, and then there were the sprints, all the days there, and we work on them, and there was different meetings regarding that. So with that feedback, we made actually some iterations. But before jumping to show you the wireframes, I would like to explain some of the constraints that we have. For example, we need to think and to give a solution for having content that is, on some situations, is structured, like is unstructured, like a landing page, for example, where you have the title or whatever, and then you have a lot of paragraphs or blogs or whatever, and you want to drag and drop, and you want to build your own landing page. And a lot of sites need that. And that's a modern interface that we expect nowadays. But on the other hand, we have a really structured content, especially in big websites, where you don't want to add any other field than the ones that you have there. So we have to give a solution for both sides. Another thing that we need to take into account is that nowadays, not thinking on decouple is not being realistic. So decouple is a really important thing right now on the Drupal sphere and everywhere. So we really need to think about decouple right now and give solutions that actually take that into account. We need to simplify the interface, but not not getting rid of the flexibility. This one, desktop first, is a little bit of controversial. We actually had several conversations about that. The main thing here is that you need to remember that we are thinking on a person that is going to be working on that most of their time, working time. So people probably is going to add content while they are working, and I don't know you, but I don't know that many people that spends 8 hours with a mobile phone. So. And another thing is that we need to think about simple and complex forms at the same time. It means that short forms and long forms, but it also means forms where people have different levels of permissions, for example, or where forms that you can actually extend them. So we have to give options for all these situations. So here's the first form, the first wireframe. That's the classic form mode. You will see that mainly what is the form is mainly the same that we know right now. It's the classic field, the classic tags field. There's nothing different here. We have the settings on the left. We have the bar that we were seeing on Gutenberg, for example, on the top. And then there's this left menu on the left that it actually adds several things like adding more content, going back or forward on your edits, and then there are several things like layout, form mode, translation, some of the things that we actually have on tabs. We move them on the left, and that will be the classic form mode. That's the top bar, the left menu that I was saying, and then we have this. We proposed this inline form mode. That's Gutenberg. I'm not going to hide it. It's completely based on Gutenberg. That's really super cool to edit content that way. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. I'm just going to go through the wireframe. For example, what we were thinking here is that, for example, you go to one thing, you edit it, and you have some quick elements in a bubble just under it when you start, over it when you start editing it, and then you have on the right some advanced options. For example, have you ever worked with Sketch or Illustrator or any visual editing tool? When you click somewhere, you actually have advanced editing options on the right for this element itself. So, for example, the title is obvious what you can do, but imagine that you start working on the images and you want to actually add there, I don't know, on a slider or something like that. So it could be an advanced option that you see once you click over it. The left menu could be tweakable, and you could add more elements. This is the result of the conversation with people from Paragraphs and from Layout Builder. The idea here was not being opinionated, actually just giving the tools for the different initiatives to actually add whatever they thought. If they wanted to work with custom blocks, just do it. If you want to work with paragraphs, just do it. So we are not going to take a decision for you. Then you could switch between visualization. For example, you could see the mobile version, the tablet, even the teaser, or you have an app. Those are really cool and fancy ideas if you only think on them. And then you had the form mode option here, where you could actually imagine that you are seeing or editing the teaser mode, and you actually have more fields on this content type. Then you switch to the backend or classic form mode, and then you have all the information there. So the ideas were really cool. And then when we actually started to talk with people about that, then we realized about the problems that we were facing here. What about the responsive preview? That's really nice, but are you going to actually keep moving things up and down when you are on a mobile form mode? What about the coupled preview solution? How are we going to see how is it going to look like on a preview solution? Also, what about real-time content preview? A lot of competitors from Drupal are actually giving that solution. What we were seeing there wasn't a real solution for that, because remember, this is based on Gutenberg, and Gutenberg is not a front-end editing tool. And the real front-end preview and a solution that is really moving around things through the layout and moving elements, that's something that is not happening there. So after this solution that we started here during, that we proposed for Drupal Europe, we started several conversations, and we all agreed that we should actually take into account also a solution like that, where you actually have on the right, those are wireframes, please don't be scared about the designs. So you have on the right the content that you are actually editing on the left. So what you have on the left right now is a classic form mode. We need to talk about that and to see if we really solve it that way. But the important thing is that you have on the right whatever you are building, and it just gets updated. So the good thing there is that if you are, we are giving a solution for the left side, for the form mode, and on the right we could use the front-end rendering from Drupal, or even someone could write something to use Vue or just have the React pre-visualization for whatever they are building. So it can be extendable. You can actually switch from visualizations and have, I don't know, for example, an iOS preview. I don't know, it depends. So those are just some thoughts, and we are really, Eton right now is creating a group of people with content strategists, and people actually working on big sites with a lot of content to see what makes sense, and we are going to test all these things, all these ideas, to see what makes sense and what can actually be built in a reasonable time to have something for Drupal 9. And the design part, as we were saying, we did know that the React thing was going to be harder, and we will need more time for that. But we couldn't stop the refresh for the Admin UI, so we started the designs that at least with the components that we know that the new 7 is going to use. We are using Figma. It's a design tool just like a Sketch, but it will be something like a Google Docs for designers. So you can see several of us can work together at the same time, actually giving comments to each other. And you know, some of us are in India, other people is in Europe, other people is in the States. So we really needed a tool that we didn't need to take care about control versioning and these kind of things. So mainly the workflow that we followed was after the first style guide that we created, we were having weekly or every 2 weeks at the beginning meetings where each designer proposed a component and we had a meeting to review it. After we actually get the most important or the minimum amount of components to kick off the 7 refresh. We had an accessibility review some weeks ago. There's going right now a review by external designers from the Drupal community that haven't been involved on the review, on the process, I mean. And there's going to be this final issue to get feedback from the community. So mainly we are working on components. Our design workspace, it's a lot of spaces, each for each component, and we work on them and pick something from here and use somewhere else, but mainly we are focusing on components. And then we are, for each component, we are creating the style guide, defining font sizes, spaces like margins or paddings or these kind of things. And then we are building this, a bunch of pages to see how these components behave together. So this will be the node edit form, for example. It's super clean here, everything white. There are different grays here. No, I don't think. No, it's not visible. Well, there are different. It's much cleaner. It's much lighter than actually the 7 that is right now. And mainly what we want to do here, I haven't mentioned it that earlier, but if we really want to have something for, I think it's in 3 months, we really need to keep changes on a CSS level. We can actually start fixing all the things, because if 7 is still not completely implemented yet, right now, if we want to do that on 3 months with the new 7, it's impossible. So we need to place a limit there, and this limit is CSS. So this will be the content listing page. You see that mostly the elements are more or less the same. What we mainly changed are font sizes. We actually decided to go with system fonts, just like Gutenberg is doing. Sorry, WordPress, but no. So, for example, on if you're working on a Mac, you will have the San Francisco or font or anything like that. So we are not using Open Sans or Arial or something like that, unless the font system is doing it. Then here we have a listing page, for example, the configuration with some errors. And finally, there's not much to say here. We just started some weeks ago. There's this 7 refresh going on. There are several issues on this repo. And if you want to help, we will really use your help. So to get involved, you can get involved in several places. If you want to do some research and help on the user studies, or if you want, you're a designer, please come. And if you want to work on the 7 refresh, the channel is in Slack, is Admin UI. We meet every Wednesday at 3:30 European time, Central European time. And if you want to work on the React and the JavaScript modernization and so on, the Slack channel is JavaScript, and we meet on Mondays at 6:30. I really want to use this time to thank all these people. I'm here talking, but a lot of people helped on doing all these things, and I really think they need to be mentioned because of their work. And that's all. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Merci. Okay.
Just
chat.
Thank you very much. It's really interesting to see what's been going on. The question is, why is all this work outside of the usual issue?
There was we started on the issue queue actually, There were several issues. One, for example, was this first issue for the modernization of the UI, where actually the issue was quiet for months. Then we started a new issue for getting people feedback and ideas for what could we actually get inside Drupal on the new interface, and actually I think 4 people answered that. Then, well, there were several issues, and actually on design perspective, I'm sorry, Drupal.org is not the place. So yeah, we're not avoiding Drupal.org, it's just that before going to Drupal.org, we need to be sure that what we are going to show, because we are going to post an issue on Drupal.org to present the designs, but we need to be sure that what we post there makes sense, and we thought most of the small things that are in the interface, because if we place a word that doesn't go there, people are going to say, hey, that word. So we really need to take care about that. For example, we really need to have these accessibility reviews before going there. We need to do a lot of work before going there. And mainly the people that is involved is also on Slack. So it's much, sadly it's not any other tool, but it's where you can actually find people. And also for design things, you want to have a call and a conversation, because you are discussing something that is right for an interview. So Drupal.org at this point is not the place. Now that we are going to move forward with designs, we are using for most of the things GitHub. Hopefully when it moves to GitLab it will be different, but right now we're using GitHub, and there are several discussions on there, on this, on the second one, and also on the other one for JavaScript. There are several discussions there.
I have a follow-up question to that. Once you land in the issue queue, plan to avoid bike shedding to death the mock-ups and the work that's been done before?
Could you repeat?
So, is there going to be someone who can decide, we stop the discussion, we implement that, and we'll see later, to actually move forward? And
yeah, probably the ones in the initiative are going to say no. So we can close the issue on Drupal.org, and as we know, you can have someone just posting a post there 2 years after anything has gone. So anything that we say there is going to be final, but there's going to be probably a time like 2 or 3 weeks where we are going to actually use all the information, and if we see there's a big issue, we will stop, but we really need to move forward. We are actually, for example, buttons, they just blue buttons, right? No. We've been working on buttons, I would say, since the first day. And because of the feedback that we've been getting, actually we gave them for finals like 5 or 6 times. Actually, the one that you see there is not the final one. So we are going to keep listening people and their feedback, but we can stop the work because we are not getting to the deadline otherwise. And probably me, Laurie, and some other people are going to say no, just move forward. We are not going to listen to you from now on. It's just that we need to move forward. Actually. We already started the development for this new 7, because there are several things that don't rely on designs, but actually some things like fields and the change of typography and these kind of things are already there, because we need to move forward. Any other?
If I may have a question, you mentioned that one of the issues content editors are facing is that they are missing like content editors documentation. So is the improvement to content editor documentation also part of this initiative or not?
No, good question. Ideally, it should be not only this initiative problem, but also it should be a problem for everyone. But we really need some way of giving this information to the content authors, and probably we don't need to think on the classic way of giving documentation to actually the content authors. Maybe we really need to place a documentation on their site. It means that the code that we are doing probably needs to have the documentation inside it. So ideally, we should be able to, on some ways, solve that.
Okay, thank you.
Another question?
You show us the split screen with the publishing at the left and the preview at the right. Okay, for the mobile, but for desktop you need a 4,000 pixel wide screen to have
Yeah.
it's the requirement.
We haven't thought on how wide you need to have the content. Actually, that's a question that actually implies to be able to take that window from here and move it.
Okay.
So we are talking about things that probably, actually, it came from an idea that Just a Fish showed us, because she had something like an independent window for a React app that I don't remember the name she was building, and she was editing the content safe, and then it updated on the other window. So it doesn't mean that it needs to look like that. It's just we will have another place that can be at the same time, can be seen at the same time. So we are not really sure what will end up, how it will end up looking.
And as far as contributing to the initiative, like what is today something that needs to be worked on? Like,
Which one of the parts?
well, the one you showed us, I guess.
So you can talk about,
The refresh, maybe?
the refresh, the 7 refresh.
Yeah.
So we are talking, the conversation is happening on the Admin UI channel, but then there's this GitHub repo. Actually, it looks like something like that. And most of the issues are or needs design or needs definition. Some of them are tagged that needs a live revision, but some of them are really to development. So anyone willing to help can just go there and pick an issue, and
There's no like priority of what to do first.
there are like 6-10 issues. So yeah, so and most of them are already picked. So whatever you find. So it's going to be, I guess, once we have the final buy-in from the community, we will start releasing more issues. We just don't want to make all buttons blue and then the community says, no, they have to be green. So something like that. Any other question? Then, thank you all for coming.